Welcome to the Morning After CFFL edition on YouTube, the official home of the CFFL network. This is the post-Week 2 edition. We'll take a look at last week's games, and we'll have a hard-hitting expose done by our sideline reporter, Emma. So that'll be our show today. We'll get ready to start it off right away here, as our sideline reporter is here this week, and she does have that breaking story for us. First, let's give you a little background on it. Last year, one of our league members, Bailey's Law Dogs, who is now somewhere, we can only assume where, possibly Emma reports, maybe somewhere in Saskatchewan or the Yukon Territory. Last year there was some missing checks, and when the check did come in, it was only a partial payment. Is it part of a bigger cover-up? What happened, allegedly, was that these checks were sent to the mailroom, and somewhere in that mailroom they disappeared. For a couple months, these checks disappeared. We can only assume the worst as to what happened. So now we'll bring in our sideline reporter, Emma, who'll give you a little more information on the subject. Emma, what can you tell us about it? Okay, you think it's a huge scandal, and you think that there was something maybe bigger going on. Do you think it was a cover-up by the law firm? No. Do you think it was aliens, maybe? No. You think something supernatural, though, huh? Well, what do you think it was? I haven't seen this segment, so I don't know what's going to happen here. But you said you have a video proof of what happened. Video proof. All right, let's go to it and see what happened. You have proof of what happened in this mailroom as to what happened to these checks. So let's take a look right now. Your proof is that everyone turned into a wolf man. Really, Emma? A wolf man? I know that's yours and Glenn's favorite movie, The Wolf Man, starring Benicio del Toro, not really critically acclaimed, but well-loved by all basset hounds. Not really sure that I think that that's the best way to go with that. But it's a possible story, I guess. I can't discount you. We'll have to hear from Bailey to find out what for sure happened, if everyone in that mailroom turned into a Wolfman or not. But we'll check with him, and Emma's expose will be back next week with probably a little less Wolfman. Time for her to go to the Exercaucer, and she'll be back next week. But for now, let's get into the highlights and the stats from this past week. This week, the Bruisers topped the Badgers 86-42. The Bruisers moved to 2-0, and the Badgers fall to 0-2. The Super Bowl hangover continues, although Deshaun Jackson had 16 points for the Badgers. However, the Badgers had Eddie Lacy and Larry Fitzgerald leave the game with injuries. Fitzgerald came in a little nicked up. Lacy left with a concussion. Danny Amendola and Shane Vereen did not play. Badgers have a lot of injuries already. Not a good start for last year's Super Bowl champ. The Bruisers, though, had a huge week. 3 players over 15 points for Bernie. A really good start. Lamar Miller bounced back in a big way and showed why he was worth a third-round pick. Next up, we had the Cardinals take down the Bone Storm this week, 71-51. Jimmy Graham had 15 points in a huge day. Also, some other members of the Cardinals had a pretty good week. Matthew Stafford was solid. The running backs, though, for the Cardinals were let down again. Chris Johnson came close to 100 yards, but Trent Richardson continued his disappointing ways with only 3 points again. As for the Bone Storm, Peyton Manning, a good week, but nowhere near last week's performance, only 15 points. Also this week, we saw the Black Dingoes take down the Garbage Men. The Dingoes moved to 2-0, and the Garbage Men fall to 0-2. Garbage Men are waiting for some of their guys to get healthy. Gronk may be back this week. Black Dingoes, though, had a big week out of Tavon Austin and 14 points off of 2 touchdowns. And Jamal Charles, the number 5 pick in the draft for the Garbage Men, has had 2 touchdowns in 2 weeks. Bad news for the Dingoes are their 2 top running backs, Ray Rice and Steven Jackson, both suffered injuries and did not return. They're questionable for week 3 coming up. Luckily, the Dingoes drafted pretty much all running backs, though, so he does have some depth there. We also then had another big game this week between the Sasquatches and the Horn Dogs. Horn Dogs win 75-57. They were down late, but Marshawn Lynch and the Seattle defense had 33 points. Also, Anquan Bolden chipped in with 0. But yeah, Marshawn Lynch, 23 points in this game off of 3 touchdowns. Sasquatches had a very good week out of Pierre Garcon, 14 points, including a late garbage time touchdown, but it still counts. Made it very close and had a big lead, looking like he was going to win, but the Horn Dogs rallied to win 75-57. Then we take you to the Dan division. as Team LBM beat the Kongs 83-53 to move to 2-0, and the Dan division, of course, is led by Chad. The Kongs fall to 1-1, still a better start than last year of 0-3. Michael Vick had 25 points for Team LBM, and Aaron Rodgers had 27 points for the Kongs. However, the rest of his team scored 26 in a very disappointing effort for the Kongs, outside of Rodgers, that is. That was a very disappointing week. And finally, in the other matchup in the Dan division, saw the Gargoyles pick up their first win of the year. They moved to 1-1 to knock off the 0-2 Donkeys, 62-58. Des Bryant had 14 points for the Gargoyles. Colin Kaepernick did not have a good week, but after last week, it still evens out. The Donkeys, though, saw Randall Cobb and Sebastian Janikowski combined for 27 points. The rest of the team, though, was pretty disappointing. This was the upset of the week, as the Donkeys were favored by 16 points in the always reliable ESPN projections. So those are the scores for the week. Now we got to get into some of the awards and see who was the MVP, who got the Walk of Shame, and also debut our new segment coming up. On to the Player of the Week. Once we get this right. Now, we're having computer issues here. Player of the Week was Aaron Rodgers, and if you're wondering where I found that picture, I did not make it myself. That was actually on a German football website, comparing apparently Aaron Rodgers to a Basset Hound. He's nowhere near as good looking as a Basset Hound, in my opinion. But Aaron Rodgers did have a really good week this week. 480 yards, 4 touchdowns, 27 points in the league, as he destroyed the Redskins. And the Packers destroyed the Redskins. The Redskins defense not looking real good and might be a big fantasy play for whoever has a quarterback against them. Rodgers was big this week. Quite good, and without that, the Kongs would have really had a horrible, horrible week. Now we debut the new segment. If any of you have seen the show Breaking Bad, you know it's the best show on television, and if you haven't, then you don't know what the best show on television is. So our new segment is called Yo Bitch, and it is the top free agent signing of the week. This week, the projected top free agent target will be Eddie Royal. 70 yards, 3 touchdowns this week, as he had 22 points. Also, this is his 5th touchdown on the year. Will it continue? Probably not, but that's a heck of a start by anybody. And Eddie Royal was a good player before all the injuries. So it'll be interesting to see where this goes from here for him. Chargers offense is looking not the best, but they've been passing the ball quite a bit, so who knows? Maybe it'll work out, and maybe he will develop into the number 1. Janae Alexander was very good last year. Now we'll take a look at the Walk of Shame, and it's a 2-person Walk of Shame. Maurice Jones-Drew had 25 carries, 72 yards on the year, 3 total points, and he also was hurt in this game, and he's questionable for next week. He was the number 12 pick, and luckily he's had a really bad start to the year. Otherwise, that would be Trent Richardson up there, who has had a combined 6 points so far for me. So double Maurice Jones-Drew, but still pretty disappointing. The other person in the Walk of Shame this week is Dan of DK's Kongs, who besides Aaron Rodgers' 27 points this week, his other 8 players had 26 points. A very disappointing week for the Kongs. And it was, a rough start considering he had a flex position in there, but, he'll bounce back, 1-1. And finally, let's take a look at Griff's gripes this week. And Griff asked the question, is that you, Brett? And it's not Brett Favre. But he asked, was that Bielema on the Badgers sideline during the loss to ASU? Everyone is giving Anderson a pass, but we would have been calling for Bielema's head if that happened under his watch. So much for Wisconsin's national championship aspirations. Bring back the Wildcat. Disappointing start, but I guess you can't play UMass and Tennessee Tech every week. But a controversial finish and a weird play by Stave. I don't know what he was doing. It was quite bizarre. But that's it for the morning after this week. We went a little longer than we would have liked, but 9 minutes, 30 seconds, and we had a hard-hitting expose. So tune in next week for week 3, and we'll see what happened in the week. Good luck to all.